Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hello there, and welcome on the Think Lab Growth Mindset podcast. I'm Sophie Champagne, your host, and I will be interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs from our community. We will go through their journey, successes and failures, and concrete advice. In this episode, I will be interviewing Annie Flannaga from Numberlust, a consulting company based on fintech. We will be talking about the challenges of creating a service company on a very competitive market. Welcome on the podcast, Annie. You are co-founder at Numberlust, a platform helping small and medium businesses to benchmark financial data and performance from their industry. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I think having worked in, the advisory or the bookkeeping advisory space with SMEs, one of the things that we've recognised and noticed over the years is that SMEs are surprisingly similar.
Yeah.
But where they're different, they're very different. And there's a lot of generic help for them, but this is about building a platform that will really help give them some insight as to where they are, not only in their industry, but in their environment, so in their economic environment, in their financial environment, with as much context as possible.
Okay, and on which sector are you working? We've
chosen tech services, so companies that install or advise based on technology platforms, and also the legal industry.
Okay, and you want to extend to more industries?
We will do. So we've taken those two. It's where we've got, deepest expertise.
Yeah.
But also I think from experience, the legal profession, as they call it, rather than industry, is going through great change. And technology services are obviously the industry that's changing professional services. So there's lots of reasons why we've chosen those two. And we're interested in the verticals as they stand, so how a law firm compares to other law firms. But we're actually much more interested in how the two verticals are similar.
Yeah, okay, all right.
So what can they learn from each other? Because actually the SME, and I think business generally, is very isolating. You're very much, out in the wilderness on your own, and I think there's a lot that can be done to build communities of clusters of, organisations within industries where they can learn from each other without divulging anything that's going to be disadvantageous to them as an organisation.
Yeah, right. And when did you start Numberlust?
Look, I think it started for me personally So I started Better Business Basics, which was our service business, which is the business that pays my bills. It's basically where I get my paycheck.
Yeah. And what is it exactly?
It develops bookkeeping and financial systems and processes within SME. So we basically wrap up everything to do with the financial side of running a business, and we deliver that for a fixed fee. Sometimes putting in teams, sometimes putting in just an individual, but we basically do everything from data entry, data import, right the way through to reporting and analysis. So having done that, from there, having started in South Australia, so started in Adelaide, about 4 or 5 years in, I could see that Adelaide was flatlining. So this would have been around 2010, 2011. As an economy, we were going backwards. It was a terrible place to have a business.
Oh, really? Okay.
In my view, it was very, very tough. And what I wanted to see with my team was whether we could take what we'd built here and duplicate it across the state, so across the country in different states. So I uprooted my children. They were only young, so it was possible to do without too much disruption, and it was a bit of an adventure for us all. Moved to Sydney and basically started the business again over there. So kept the Adelaide business going. So it was like having two plates spinning in the air, and then we had a third plate, which was Victoria, which was Melbourne. And what happened there was interesting because I landed in Sydney without a team, so we had a team back here. But all I knew was how to build a business in Adelaide, in the Adelaide market, with Adelaide businesses and with Adelaide staff.
Yeah.
And having started again, I wanted to take what I'd learned in Adelaide and transpose that to the market in Sydney. And one of the things, or two things I discovered is, one, how similar the SMEs in Sydney were to the ones in Adelaide, which is obvious, but how different some things were that I wasn't expecting.
Like
so I kept a journal. Well, it was interesting because I kept a journal during that period. And when I look back now and read it, it's fascinating the things that... So the things were, for example, business is much faster in Sydney. So people make decisions much more quickly, both positive and negative. So you're hired really quickly and you're fired really quickly.
Yeah, right.
And so that means that your business sales cycle, so how quickly you grow, is going to be affected. Now, there's a good example of something that I learned here in Adelaide. And we had, I guess, we knew what starting a business in Adelaide was like. But then you go to Sydney and it's totally different.
Yeah, right.
And not knowing that, I wish I had somebody then to say, look, this is what to expect. It may not be what happens to you, but this is what you need to be prepared for. And instead I learned that the hard way. And then, of course, we went to Melbourne, different again.
Yeah.
And so I think Numberlust came from, if I look way back, it came from the ability to be able to use other people's experience in different contexts to be able to make decisions.
It's not something that you tried to do when you arrived in Sydney and in Melbourne. You didn't try to reach out some mentors or connections.
Well, I was very fortunate that we had worked really hard to build a good reputation here, and all of our new business came from referrals, which is very Adelaidean.
Yeah,
fantastic. So, and I went to all of the accounting firms that referred us work and said, going to Sydney, don't really know anybody, would you mind or would you be comfortable introducing us to your counterpart in Sydney?
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate that we had people that referred us to their connections on their networks. And then from there, we just worked really hard. And it was really tough because for 6 months, we didn't have a single sale. And I was flying backwards and forwards from Sydney to Adelaide, not knowing whether we'd made the right decision. Because everybody in Adelaide said to me at the time, don't go to Sydney, it's so East Coast, you need to stay here. Adelaide's fantastic.
Yeah.
Don't go to Sydney, it's dirty, smelly, the people aren't as nice. Stay here. But my instinct was that we were going backwards, not just us, but lots of our customers, our clients that we were looking after here were also going backwards. And the fear was...
What do you mean by that?
Not as profitable, business was getting harder, it was getting harder and harder to basically achieve the results that they had been achieving.
Do you know why?
Oh, I think these things are very complicated, but
competition
Adelaide,
with Sydney? Or?
Oh, I think Adelaide today is very different from Adelaide 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that's so exciting about being part of the startup ecosystem now is you're starting to see, I think, many people who committed to Adelaide or committed to South Australia put their resources, their business ideas here to start to see them flourish. And I think but Adelaide in 2010 was a very different place.
Okay.
And I think going to Sydney was a well-trodden path for lots of people. And I think it's always going to be one of those challenges for us, is that we lose good people over there. But I think we're fighting back. I mean, it feels like we are. And I think I have the opportunity to live anywhere, really, within Australia. And I choose to live back here. And that wasn't how I felt, 9 years ago.
Okay. So you extended the business in Sydney and then in Melbourne, and then what happened?
And then I came back.
Yeah, you came back.
Yeah.
And so you decided with your co-founder to create Numberlust. when you came back to Adelaide, right? Or did you have the idea already?
No, so came back here in 2014, and it really would have taken another, I think, probably 3 years. So the move to Sydney and starting the business and establishing the business in Sydney and in Melbourne, I think planted the seed. I think it really only started to crystallise probably 4 or 5 years ago, and then it takes time. It takes time to really research, to understand what you're trying to do, to talk to lots of people, and those people that know me really well, so mentors and my business network, so those people that I lean on for advice. Would probably roll their eyes and say, oh my God, she's still talking about it. These things do take a lot longer than you think, and I feel like I've been talking about it forever. But I'm a great believer that sort of people come into your life as they're meant to, and I interviewed Ben, who's my co-founder, for a role at Better Business Basics. So he came along to that interview. I think he came to the interview thinking he was going for one job and actually ended up with something quite different. Yeah. But we're very complementary. I think he has experience and an approach to the world which is very different from mine. But we work really well together. But it's very much a new experience for me working with a co-founder. As is working in a startup at ThinkLab. So I think for me, this really all started to become very real about 2 years ago.
What have you found the most challenging in creating a service company?
One of the challenges, I think, and this, if you actually step back a bit for us as a country, as an economy, this scaling services is interesting. It's not like a product. And I think particularly for South Australia, we're used to producing things. So if you make product A, then the next thing on the conveyor belt should be exactly the same as the thing before and the thing after it. Services is obviously different. We're relying on people to deliver that service, and ultimately consistency is critically important, especially if you're trying to scale. So what we worked very hard on in the early days was how could we benefit from people's differences and complexities. So how could we get people to join our team that would allow them to flourish, to contribute what made them different, and how could we harness that? But then how do you also control the service outcome when you've got lots of very different people coming together? And it's a real challenge.
Yeah, but because your main resource at the end, it's the people.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, your team.
And that's a great thing, and it can be challenging. Yeah. I think like all of us, we have great days and we have not so great days, but at the end of the day, if a customer is paying for a service, they want the same service, week in, week out. And so our challenge is how we do that within a very diverse, very remote at times team. But we are an organisation of our time. We couldn't have done what we're doing now 10 years ago. And it will look very different in 10 years. So I think, but I think the other thing that's interesting is really, and this is my own personal passion, is where how you embed data into service. So how do you productize service? I think is really interesting. And I think it's where, when we talk about offshoring to much cheaper labour economies, I think one of the areas that Australia does really well is what we know and how we harness and leverage what we know. And I think we've got to get better at tapping into that and allowing people to shine in whichever area they've developed. And it will always be a challenge because you're dealing with people.
Yeah, right. Okay. So what would be a concrete advice that you would give to a future entrepreneur in terms of recruitment? If the team is so important for a business, do you have an advice?
Don't do it. No, I think I think there is the adage around, and it's well worn around, hire slow, fire fast. So hire people slowly and carefully with intent, but as soon as if you get to a point where it's not working for either of you, then you need to gracefully let people go.
Yeah.
And you make mistakes, and I think the one piece of advice would be not to be too hard on yourself when you make mistakes. I think we all do them, and I think, you know, one of the things I've always done is been very tough on myself when I pick the wrong person, because it's not just disruptive to us as a business, it's disruptive to the client, it's disruptive but also it's really disruptive for them. I mean, it means that you have given them a promise and a commitment that you are the right place for them, and they have committed to making it work, and sometimes it just doesn't, and that's not fair on them either. So it's there's a big responsibility, I think, in employing people. I think it's something which it's a responsibility.
Yeah, right. Okay. How do you find clients? Do you network a lot?
Yes.
Is it through recommendation?
I talk all the time.
Yeah.
I love what I do, and I think I'm still a great believer that you build, reputation one relationship at a time, and I think you do your best, hopefully, with every interaction. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, and again, it's part of being human. But I think particularly in Adelaide, but I think generally, I think it's really important that you build a network of relationships where people have got your back, but also you've got theirs. And I think, and then your reputation speaks for itself. Yeah. And I think that's the danger with working in an economy where people hire fast and fire fast, which was Sydney, and that was the big shock for me. Is that it took us a while to get the right client, but once we had our first customer, we then had replicated our revenue. Mm-hmm. It took us 11 months in Sydney to do what took us 5 years here.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a good example of when you've got a faster economy where people make decisions, you can build something much faster. And it comes with other problems, of course, but it's and so I think that was a good, and that was built on the back of the relationships we've built here.
Okay. So, right. And what about marketing? Do you do some advertising? Or
no. The worst money I've ever spent has been in marketing. Oh, terrible.
Can you tell me about it? Because it's great advice actually for future entrepreneurs, like.
And I can only speak for myself.
Should they go for marketing campaigns or not? Sometimes it's a bit tricky to make a decision.
I think it's a decision that requires a lot of thought. I think a lot of people spend money in marketing and advertising on the basis that it's a magic bullet and it will solve everything. I still struggle with the lack of accountability. And that's my issue, not the marketing or advertising industry's issue. But I think when we go into a customer and we scope a job, we cost it. And then the customer says, well, that's great, but what are we going to get for our money? And we are very clear and transparent in what they can and should expect with the monthly fee that we charge. What I struggle with marketing and advertising is we'll spend this and we'll just cross our fingers and hope that. Yeah. And I think a lot's changed in that area. So I would say proceed with caution. I'm not a great fan. I think we spend more of our time and effort in building relationships with people that can then refer us work, It's a much slower way of doing things, but I think it's more robust. Mm-hmm. So proceed with caution, I think, is probably the best. Yeah.
Great. How do you convince businesses to work with you? Because as a service provider, I think one of your big challenge when you want to scale is to convince businesses that you are the best to do the job, and that they cannot do it by themselves, because they are also small businesses, right? And they want to save money and everything. So how do you manage to convince small businesses especially?
Someone taught me something very early on. So it came from somebody much older, much wiser, who'd been in business for a long time. And he said the biggest mistake people make when they're selling, because ultimately that's what I do. I mean, that's what we do. We go into businesses and we sell our services, and it's an exchange. Is that they look at the exchange from only their own perspective. So it would be like me going in to see a small business owner or a board or a accounting firm and selling the benefits and spruiking the benefits of what we do. But the advice I was given I then took on board and made a huge difference was to actually take myself out of my position, put myself in the position of the person that had asked us to come in and try and see things from their perspective. So what were they trying to solve? What were the headaches? What was keeping them up at night? And that's incredibly difficult to do. And you can only hope to have some of that perspective. But I think to stop for a minute before you're in your full sales spiel is to actually sit down and say, okay, which industry is this person in? How long have they had their business? What are their headaches? And to ask the right questions. Which I think is half the problem, and then the other half the problem is to keep your mouth shut and just listen to what's being said to you. Because I think one of the other challenges with SMEs is what they think is the problem. Very often, is actually not the problem per se. It's how they perceive it and how it looks to them, but very often is actually something completely unrelated. Okay. And our job is and my job now, I think, having done this for so long, is to read between the lines, to actually say, okay, I'm hearing that this is your problem, but actually this isn't my problem at all.
Psychology.
It is, and I think the proof is in the pudding. I think a few weeks in, if that customer can come to me and say, I don't know what you've done, but you and your team, I just feel completely different, or this has gone away, or that to me is the mark of someone who understands what they do, truly understands what they do.
Okay. You were mentioning earlier the South Australian startup landscape and how it has changed. Did you find the support you needed when you came back to Adelaide?
Look, I think for me, the cornerstone for us has been ThinkLab. I think Adelaide University, and I think what they've done with ThinkLab has been phenomenal. I think in large part, the space they've created, the environment they've created, the feeling of being part of something much larger has been extraordinary. We're still living, to a certain extent, in our heyday, whenever that was, and it was obviously before my time. But I come to South Australia, and I always have done with an outsider's view.
Yeah, right.
And I still don't understand a lot of what happens here.
Okay. So you would advise people to take more risk and have a bit more.
But I think that's to a certain extent. I think that's Australia's problem. Okay. But it's certainly South Australia's problem. I think we have to take measured risk. I'm not talking about reckless risk. Nobody wants reckless risk, but I think that some of the bravest people I've ever met are people that have started and failed, and started and failed, and started businesses. But if you look at we're an SME state. Adelaide's full of big business and then very small business, and those people put their livelihoods on the line every single day. So it's a fascinating state. It really is. I mean, it shouldn't work, but it does in kind of some ways. But I think we need to be a bit bolder, I think, in terms of the way we do things.
Right. And do you plan to extend your business to Sydney, to Melbourne again with Numberlust?
Yes.
Just like you did.
Yeah, it's actually the plan is to make it global. I mean, we would love to run this platform to other economies that have a big SME component. So in this country, we have a large part of our GDP is underpinned by the activities of small and medium-sized businesses. And there are a number of economies around the world where that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
And, we create jobs, we do move mountains as a body. We're very fragmented. And big business is fine, and they have their place without doubt. But I think if you look at flexibility, so workplace flexibility, a lot of that started with women struggling to find roles that were flexible enough for them to have a family. And so they started their own business. I mean, that was my story. I mean, when I came to Australia, I just, because of a personal circumstance, I didn't want to work. I couldn't find something that would work with what I needed. And in fact, we only employ part-time people on that basis. So I think we would love to roll out the platform to other economies that have SMEs as a very large part of their economic landscape. And there's a number of those countries around the world.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the ThinkLab Growth Mindset podcast. You will find in the description some details about my invitee contacts, links, and music jingle production. Please share this episode and send me your feedback. That's very important to me. Catch up soon for a new episode.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.